So this we have seen yesterday, and let me open you one more sample. So properties, so we'll see. So what is properties I explained yesterday, and we'll see some of them. I added some property class one. Here if we see, so I explained yesterday about some of the properties. What is the read-only property will do, what is the behavior of read-write property, and we'll talk about something atomic. So atomic property, so we can see the actual behavior, so when we started the threads, but before that we'll know about what is the atomic. So atomic is one of the attribute of a property. So by default, all variables, like for example, if I define this variable, if I not provided anything, so by default here the value 1 is atomic and read write. All variables by default is read write and atomic. Even if we won't specify any attribute for that property, the property by default will be atomic property. So what is atomic? Why the Apple is made the property as a atomic? So if we won't do anything, the Apple will give a support with objectiveC. It will make sure that synchronized object. Now this data is synchronized data. By default it's synchronized. Synchronized in the sense, if this data is accessed with multiple threads, when there are multiple threads are accessing the same value or doing some manipulations, the value will give you, this variable will give you the consistent value which is last changed the value in the specific address. That value will be shared to other threads. So means it makes sure a consistency value in value consistency when it is accessed from multiple threads if it is atomic. So that is the advantage. By default the objectiveC will give a surety on the value when it is accessed from multiple threads. So that is the usage of atomic. When it's coming to non-atomic, non-atomic is completely is developer choice. The developer has to make that object should is how that needs to be behaved in multi-threading environment, either that object how exactly he want to access and all. But by default, when a property is defined as a non-atomic, that cannot give any surety of value access when it is accessing with multiple threads. When there are multi threads are accessing this value, this variable value, so this object cannot give any surety whether that is the latest value which is updated in this memory or not. So if it is non-atomic, so that developer should take care of it, how that value is changing or how the behavior is working. But if it is atomic, the objectiveC inbuilt, your compiler will make sure to share the latest value which is set in this address. So whatever the last value is stored in this address, that value will be shareable when the another thread is requested this variable. So that is the basic thing. You can keep in mind what is atomic, non-atomic. These two attributes will use in multi-threading environment. So if multi-threading environment using atomic values, the atomic values can give you the consistent behavior. If there is a 4 threads are accessing one variable, that variable can provide you the consistent value which is lastly updated in that address if it is atomic. If it is non-atomic, that surety was not there. As a developer, you should make sure how that value changes were happening. So the completely it depends on the developer choice how to give a security for the data or how to make sure the crashes are the reference basis and all the things the developer should take care when it is given as a non-atomic. So that is the difference. These two or multi-threading concurrency execution level attributes. So when we use data members in multi-threading, if you want to synchronize, atomic will do it. Will be used, it will be reduce the speed of the process. I'm saying that reducing the speed of the process in the sense, it's like when there are 4 threads wanted to access the value. If there is one more thread is accessing this value, it won't give, when the same time if another thread is requesting to give the value from this variable, so this variable cannot give the value what is there at previous. It keeps in wait pool and it releases the value whenever it's got updated with the latest. So that is the basic thing like will happen, but it will reduce speed. This point is wrong, so maybe I updated it wrong. See, it's not related about any speed, so either atomic non-atomic, no property will give you high speed for your multi-threading. So the speed and all the thing will take care by your threading and as well as your processor and the logic which you made, but this will take care about whether the value is consistent when it is accessed with multi-threads. That is only the concept will be taken care. So only the accuracy of the sharing values when it is accessed by multi-threads. That accuracy and the consistency we can see in atomic, that we cannot see in non-atomic. If you want to see that behavior, that should be taken care by the developer. But there is no inbuilt. Atomic will take care inbuilt. That is the basic difference. These properties is mandatory. We should aware of it, when to use, why to use, and how to use, where to use when you write your objective-C program. If it is already you received any project which you are working, it's already having objective-C code, we should know that why they have used it, what kind of behavior they expected when you create this one property as like these attributes. Because if there is no use, they won't even add at least a single attribute. So that should keep in mind. If they added one attribute means this variable is using in a different approach. So when I said only read only, so that variable is having some different behavior. So because of that reason, they restricted the write operation. So we should keep in mind. So by understanding those attributes, so why we declare that attributes like that, based on that behavior. If you know that behavior, what is the attribute behavior, so that we can understand well why we declare that variable as like that attribute, like that such kind of property. And I explained yesterday about strong and weak. So strong will increase your references and it will give you the like ownership for the other objects as well on the memory. But whereas weak, it increases the references but there won't be any ownership on that specific address. If any one strong object is got deallocated, if that strong object is having any weakly referred attributes inside, then that won't stop to deallocate that specific strong object. But if there is a strong object internally, for example, we created one object for properties class. So by default, all the objects are strong objects in objective-C. There is no object says weak, all objects are strong objects. If we explicitly specify, then only it will be weak, or else it is a strong object. When we create one object for this property class 1, so that object holds all these values. Here different data types having different behavior. So this data type is having read write and this is also read write, and this object is having strong reference, if and this object is having weak reference. If this object is referred by another class or another object, if I want to release this object property class 1, then that won't be deallocated from the memory, since it waits for the another object to release that memory. So here we can see that I created 1, 2 and 3 objects, 3 property class objects. I added one string object here and one string object here, and I'm assigning this second object string object to third object, and so there are different changes which I have seen. Now we can see the behavior, how the strong and weak works. You can understand something. So I already explained you yesterday. or about the reference counts and all. You can understand there is a created str and string 5 or something like that. Now object 2, what the object 2 is having, it is having some values, value 1, value 2, two integer variables, and one str2, str3, str5, and these are three string variables. Oh, 1 2 3 4, four string variables we have, string objects, four string objects we have, and two variables we have for every object. Let's say I'm initializing that object 2 dot str high to object 3 dot str, and object 2 dot str to object 3 dot str5. So this str5 is a copy. So now object 2 dot str is equal to, I'm changing to value, so another value. So initially it is pointed to high, now I'm changing to how are you. Now I changed object 2, but this object 2 str is referred by the object 3 str 5 and object 3 str object as well. So here I'm displaying object 1 dot str, so means hello, and object 3 dot str5 means whatever the object 2 will have. So here object 2 is having the string called hi, so ideally it should refer hi. So we'll see what is displaying str5. So it's displaying hello, object 1 dot str, it is fine, object 3 dot str5 is referring hi. And what is this object 2 dot str is having? Like we'll display this object 2 dot str as well. Object 3 dot str will display object 3 dot str5. str is a strong reference and str3 and 5 are weak references. 3 and 5. 3 str5 and object 3 dot str. Hello, hi, object 2 dot str. Okay, so when we do that copy, so copy will give you the different reference. Okay. So copy will give you a different reference. So like here if we see that, so what the copy will do, I will tell you that. So here we can see there is one object called str5. I created like a copy. When we create one copy object, the basic behavior what the copy will do, so this is one object, this is another object, so this is a copied object. when object is copied from the obj, so later if this is change, if this is having some change, if obj copied got value change, that won't be reflected to obj address, since when obj copied object created, it increments, it will have its own memory. So means all copied objects will have a separate instance. Now obj is having some value. So for example, this is my obj object. If this is my obj object, so here obj object is referring to this address. This is the obj memory address, memory. So here obj copied is referring to obj copied address. For example, if this value got changed, now it is pointing 1, so this is also will be, the value will be 1, because this is copied another memory location. For example, later I changed this obj is equal to 2, means this value is changed. So let's say I have an example, how to say, for example, there is an array of obj having some values 1, 2, 3, 4. So I created another array obj copied by giving obj. Here the property of obj copied is copy. So in that scenario, this obj will have its own memory. So it will be pointed like 1, 2, 3, 4. These are the values. It will create another memory location with same copy. For example, later after this statement, obj I changed to 5. For example, I added one more. So this will get updated, but this won't be updated. So this will be the same. So means I did a change here, whatever the value is there in that obj, that will be copied to this one and it will have its own memory. But later if I change some value in this obj, this value won't be changed. Whatever it is there in that state, that will be the same state. It won't give you any other value. So it's supposed to give this updated value, but it won't give this updated value. It will give you that previous value. That is the basic issue will done with the copy. Here we can see that object obj is having its own memory address and array obj copied is having own memory address. We have two objects. The two objects is having two memory locations. So here for each copy, one memory location will get incremented. But here these two objects are not referring to same address. Here two objects is having its two different addresses. After copy, if I do some change, that change is independent. It's not related to two objects. So if it is the case with references, so these both will refer to the one memory address. If it is a strong reference, this object and this object will do the one change. If I change the value at here, the same change you can get by accessing this object, or this you can access this object, you can get the same object. For example, if it is a strong, so I am creating array obj3 is equal to obj. Even if I get obj copied, I should get this whole data. Whatever it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that will be updated to this array. So if one obj and obj copied are strongly connected, then whatever the change was there, and because these two are referring to the same address. But when coming to the copy, if this object is copy, is having a property like copy, so if this object is having a copy property, when I assign this property to another object, then it will give you one more copy to hit. So it will have its own memory location. So after I do some changes, that won't be reflected. That will be independent to that object. It won't be reflected to that copied object. That is the basic behavior of a copy attribute. So when we use the copy attribute, in the sense, we want to create a new memory address when it is assigned to another object. So if there is any change in the previous object, it won't be updated. So if the business requirement wants to be like this, then you can use one property like a copy property attribute. If you want one reference, like I want the same address needs to be referred by multiple objects, if any object got changed that value, that needs to be updated in other objects, then all that needs to be in a strong cycle, then you should give that object property attribute as like a strong. Weak I already explained. So this will happen with the copy. And only copied objects, we have two concepts. One is mutable copy and one is copy. So copy means you can get a copied object, but later we can use this copied object for reading. So if you want to read and access the data from this array, we can do that. If you want to modify some data values in this, we cannot do that if it is only copy. If it is a mutable copy object, if this copied object is a mutable copy object, then we can change the content which is stored in that. I can add a, or else I can delete. Means I can do some modification to that value in that specific address if it is a mutable copy. If it is a copy, I cannot edit any content inside of this address. I can use this object as like a reading. So I can use this copy if I want to know what is there inside in the address. So that will be the basic mutable copy and copy. I will tell you that more differences when we start with mutable objects and immutable objects. But basically we need to keep in mind what is copy means. Copy will creates in one more location, memory location. It increments the memory location and it gives you the value whatever it is there while it is copied. So if there is another change after copy, if we are doing another change after copy to the original object, that won't reflect to the copied object. So here I see that this is one object and this is one object. Whatever the value is there in the object at this time of when we assigning this statement, that whole data will be copied. But after the next line, I am changing some content. So this update won't be reflected to this copied object, because once this statement is processed, this object copied will have some amount of memory based on the content which is there in that object. If I do some modifications later onwards on the original object, that modifications won't be updated automatically to the copied object. So that is the copy behavior. If it is a strong, it will update. So this is the basic usage of copy. And we can see retain and assign. There are two more properties. So as I said, copy used to create a duplicate for existing object. You can see that duplicate. Duplicate means it will have its own memory. Even if you make one more file duplication, so it will have own memory. So retain and assign. So in iOS we have two concepts, one is ARC and one is non-ARC. So ARC means automatic reference count. So automatic reference count. So we talk about strong and weak related to the reference, strong reference and weak reference. Automatic reference count in the sense, when we assign one strong object to another strong object, then the reference count will get increased. Both strong objects will refer to the same memory address, and if any value change was done in that address, the same value will be updated to the same other references. If it is weak, the change will be the same, but when it is coming to the deallocation part, the weak will have low priority, but strong will be considered as like a high priority. So it checks for that all strong references which point to that specific memory address are lost the connection or not with that specific address. If it lost the reference to that address, then that strong object will be allocated eligible for deallocation. So but whereas in the weak case it won't be there. So that is the one difference between a strong and weak. And when coming to retain and assign, so retain and assign, these will do the same how strong and weak do, but these works in non-ARC environment. Right now non-ARC is not there in Xcode. Non-ARC was there in Xcode 5 and 6 versions. Before Xcode 5 we have a non-ARC. Means there is no automatic reference count. The developer manually allocate the memory and developer manually release that object. He should make sure whether that object is reference is 0 or not. Means that specific address is not referred by any of the variables or objects, then that memory will be removed from your heap. Means your deallocation memory management will be managed such a way when that address is not referred by any variable. It means if a object reference count, if a object reference count is 0, then the memory got deleted from heap. This is the basic memory management principle in objective-C. This will be done by automatic if your Xcode supports ARC. Right now it is ARC, so that will take care how to deallocate the objects. But in earlier versions we have non-ARC in Xcode 5 and 4, but right now we are at Xcode 7. If we use Xcode 4, there is no ARC. We have used non-ARC. So in that scenario, we usually check that whether that object reference count is 0 or not. In NS object, there is a method called reference count. If this, so when I call this for each object, I usually check if this reference count is equal to 0, then I can call a release method, release message for this object. Means if this reference count is 0, it means this object is already released. I can say that. So if I pass some value for this got deleted. So this is the basic. So now this we are not handling manually. So this part will be taken care by the ARC. Means your compiler will take care of this part, how to make the reference count 0 and how to get deallocating. Because in Java we have a garbage collector. We do automatic memory management for some level, but that is also won't care of complete memory management. We should think about how to really how to stop the decoding or else unused objects creation and all. So that stuff will be there, but it gives you some level of auto reference management, like memory management can be done. So like these kind of reference counts checking or else doing the release, so those things will be taken care by the ARC. So that is the basic advantages of the ARC. So what is this reference count and why this return and assign? So as I said, when an object get deallocated, if this object want to be deallocated, means if this is the memory, if this memory I want to remove from the heap, there is obj, there is one object, this is pointing to this reference, so I cannot remove this if this relation is nil. So in that case, if my obj object is equal to nil, then I already previously given one reference like one cycle and strong relation or relation, that relation is become empty. If that there is no relation from the object to this memory address, this memory address will be deleted. Now this got deallocated from the memory, means your memory pool will get released, means this amount of memory will get deallocated from your memory, current heap memory. If this object is lost the reference means if it lost the pointing to that address, then that object will get deallocated. That is the basic scenario. So when we use assign, as a developer should write obj is equal to nil, then only this will get deallocated. If I use weak, this area will be handled by the ARC. So means the return and assign, these properties we used in non-ARC, but in ARC comes we are using strong and weak. But these property attributes we apply only for the objects, we won't apply for any data types. So here you no need to apply any property to data types. So these are primitive data types, anyhow that memory is fixed, there is no changes in the integer data memory. So if I use some object, if I extending that string characters inside of this object, my memory will get increased. In that scenario, I will give some reference to this object, either strong reference or weak reference, whatever it is. So if it is a weak, for deallocation, I no need to disconnect the pointer to the address. So your ARC will take care about how to disconnect the reference, pointer reference from str3 to that specific address, memory address. So in the strong and weak case, it will make sure that will become null. So but if it is an assign, if we use assign, we have to make it nil. So weak and assign will do the same job. This is weakly reference, this is also weakly reference to the reference variables or different reference objects. So this is the basic properties uses: read, write, and non-atomic and atomic and weak and copy and strong. So read only, if when we access this variable at outside, if you want only reading access, if you want to read only values from it, we cannot write the values, then we will go for read only feature. So if you want to give read and write features, by default it is a read and write. When it is assigned to another objects, still if you want to maintain one strong reference, then we'll give that strong. So by default, all objects, this is like existing API classes, all API classes strong relation will be handled by the compiler. But when we create our user defined API classes, then we should make sure what kind of relation we needs to attach. So this is the basic description about your properties, why we use weak and why we use strong, what happens with the memory references when strong and weak comes, is the memory count increased or reference count increased. Reference count is not equal to memory count. Here copy, when I said copy, here we can see two memory locations, two memory locations. but whereas in retain 2 reference count. Here memory locations means memory count is equal to reference count in copy, but here the reference count is not equal to memory count. Means memory count here, for example, object 2 is a strongly referred, this both will refer to the same address, means there is only one memory block in the address, but this memory block is referred by 2, this we will call it like a references. Now the reference count is 2, memory count is 1, if these two are strongly referred. If these two are copied, then 2 references, 2 will point 2 different memory locations, then 2 memory counts here, 2 reference counts here, 2 references and 2 memory counts if it is copy. If it is written as I explained, 1 memory count, 2 references. So reference count is different from the memory count. So this is also one of the logical interview question. They will check whether do you have a confidence working with properties or not. So this is about the property week. So we can learn more while we practicing some couple of applications. And now we'll go to wrapper classes. So wrapper classes, so we have in objectiveC, we have one of the concept is like wrapper classes. The wrapper classes, sometimes we have a principal data types. Principal data types are, we call it as like a primary data types, we can say primitive data types. Primitive data types means int, float, double, char, bool. These are primitive data types, means these are fixed memory allocations. There is no enhancement in the memory. If I define int a, it should take 2 bytes, float will take 4 bytes. So like char will take like 2 bytes. So when it's come to bool, it will take 1 byte. 1 bit, it will take 1 bit, it's not even 1 byte. And like the double will take your 8 bytes of memory. So like it will change. So means the memory locations are fixed. You no need to change. For example, if I create one object like one string object, if my string object is having a one character, the memory is different. If I am adding more characters, the memory will get still increased. If the string is holding more characters, your memory will get increased. So the memory size is dynamic based on the content. So when we deal with these kind of objects, we use these references like weak or strong and all. But when we deal with primitive data types, we won't give any property attributes like weak or strong. We will give either is it readable or read write, whether is it working in threading or non-threading. You want atomic or non-atomic. So you no need to apply any weak or you won't apply any weak or assign. By default, these variables we will apply only read write future. We won't give any reference counts because that doesn't make sense as well. Because when I apply the value like int a is equal to b, so here whatever the value is b is having, here int b is equal to some 2. B have 2 bytes of memory and a have 2 bytes of memory. There is no change. So everything is having is individual memory. But whereas we have seen that in reference count, if these two are strongly referred, if this is one id, and this is one ID. Identical objects, this is one ID. If this is the case, both will take 2 bytes of memory, both will refer to the same address. If this got increased, this can be increased, but both will follow the same address. So that is the difference between objects uses and data types uses. So just keep in mind, when we deal with primitive data types, the memory size is fixed. So even if you assign, so it will increase the memory, but it follows the as per that. But when it is deal with objects, the objects will be change the memory size based on the content we are storing in it, or we are manipulating with that specific object. That we should keep in mind. So these are the primitive data types. So when coming to the wrapper classes, so these primitive data types are the data types, they are not objects. Sometimes I want to send this int value, for example int age, the student age I entered some 23. I want to send this information to server. So I want to send this information to the server from my application. So if I want to send this information to the server, so this is my server, I want to send this information to the server. I want to send this integer information to server. So directly I can't send this int value, primitive data value to server. I needs to convert this data as like a object. First of all, I have to convert this integer data as object. So this object are nothing but a wrapper object. It wraps the integer data into a valid object. For that we have ns number. This is one of the class, and we have ns value. This is another class. There are the two classes in objectiveC we take support, ns number and ns value. This number class will convert this age integer value into a valid number object. So this value will be transferred with the help of this number object to server. We can send it. One object can be transferred to server, because always we transfer the data to transport layer by converting data into a valid object. We cannot send the data as it is, like the data types and all the other things. So in an object oriented environment, either it is HTTP protocol or HTTPS protocol or FTP protocol, all the information is be processed in form of objects and in form of binary data. So that binary data will be used at another end, and it will be received in form of objects. So we cannot directly send this. So by doing that, for to send this primitive data values to server or any this kind of approach, to do it, we need a wrapper classes. We should know that when someone is using a wrapper classes means, you should keep in mind, so the wrapper classes we are returning because either we are receiving data from the server or we are sending data to the server, like primitive data types values. So that can be one option when you use wrapper classes. What the wrapper class we have, ns number and ns value. What this ns number will do? ns number is responsible to convert any integer or float or double or char or bool, this data type values to valid number objects. So if you see that one example, how to create ns number object. So I created ns number on pointer reference. This is the object I created with ns number. In number I have one method called number with int. So this method will accept one integer value and converts this integer into a valid object. Now this is a object which holds the value 20. If I define int I is equal to 20, where the I is data type, integer data type. Here the same 20 value is integer, but I wrapped into a object. So that is called interop. It's a ns number object. Now it is a number object. The number object means it can convert integer data, or there is another method called number with float. You can change this. These are different methods. It converts your float data. I want to add number with bool. It stores your boolean value into a number object. Similarly, char, it stores your character data into a valid number object. So we can convert the primitive data types into a valid object with the help of ns number. Whereas there is another values we can see in objective-C. That is, since the object is we will display data in iPhone. So as I said, it follows some dimension. Like the iPhone screen will have different dimensions. So when we represent one graphical elements, so let's say this is my iPhone screen. I want to design one login page. So if I want to do that, for example, this is my login page. So this is my screen. Let's say this is my screen. I want to create one username and password. So I have to specify this object, where should I place, what is my origin position, what is the width and what is the height. So when I need to specify one dimension, so that dimension is nothing but a different value. It's one origin with width and size. There is a origin, there is a size. It should be start from somewhere on the screen, and it should have some width and it should have some height for this graphical element. Then the data types are nothing but structures. We used in C language, we have structures and enumerators. There are different concepts in C language. If you want to convert these structures and enumerators into a valid objects, we have another class that is responsible to do that. That is called ns value. As I said, there is a class called ns value. So this class will take about converting those graphical properties or graphical primitive data types into a objects. So here we have this, and if it is a graphical element, we see cg point. So it contains x and y, x position and y position, and we have another structure is called cg size. It contains width and height. So we call it as like cg rect. It is one frame. It contains x, y, width, height. So it gives you some properties related to your graphical elements. If you want to store these graphical elements as a objects, we should use ns value. Ns value will take care about converting these points and sizes and rectangles into a valid object. We can send those data to server as an object. So this will be used to wrap and unwrap the content. So I converted this integer to valid number object. I want to get a integer value from this object. I can do that, int wrap, and I can use method called int value. Now this will convert a value which is stored in this number object to a valid integer. So it converts an ns number to integer. This is integer to ns number. Similarly, we have same. I will run you one application so that we can see. Here we can see that the different, we created one class. This is number is stored 20 and created ns number with number with int. It's converted this. Let's see, are we able to run this or not? No, this is a one issue. So we have one of the application we created yesterday, that is called iOS samples. Let's add one more project. Neighbor classes the demo. Just create it. Just drag and drop these two. Now add it. I use somewhere some copying is like that. I want to run that. I know the main method is initial method. So let's say I use some. Now I created object and I'm calling this wrap the data values. So now let's see. Let me run this application wrapper classes. I selected this. It's this. There's what is happening? Okay. So we'll see that. So I will tell you this later, but so let's use this one first initially. Let's declare in .h as well. So we declared, and we have, so run this. Now we can see we are converting that integer to number, and later we are reconverting just. Now int number is having 20 value. I change the number to 22, and float fnum is 12.5. Later I change to 22.5. Character is a, I change it to b. Now if I unwrap the value to integer, so int num is already having 20, but this number variable is referring to 22. If I retrieve the value, I should get 20 value. So now this became 20. The float is having 12.5 when I converted to number. So later this reference is changed to 22.5. If I rewrap the data from the number, so I can get my old data, what is stored in that. So similarly, whatever is there in that, I can get it back. So you can see the A. So this is the way like you can convert one number normal object primitive data type to ns number object. Later we can convert a number object to primitive data type value. So if you print that, since ns log I use different formatters, %type for integer, %f for float data, %c for printing character data. So this is basically about ns number. I will tell you that ns value tomorrow. So this is the way like to convert one primitive data type values into a valid number objects, and later reconverting from number to its own primitive data types. This is the way like we can do it, and I will explain you about ns value tomorrow.